That'll definitely have you howling over on ITV4 now. Here we get an insight into one of the country's oldest professions with Anne Widdecombe versus prostitution.
My name's Anne Widdecombe from ITV, and I'm making a programme about prostitution, and I wondered what your view on the subject was.
Depends if you're offering anything.
Well, she certainly wanted paying for her views. I wonder if she wants paying for anything else. There are seedy services being sold in the UK that the public shouldn't have to put up with.
We're now overrun with prostitutes.
Lottie, you're a bunch of
Decent neighbourhoods across the country are being affected.
We're making a programme about
It's sordid, it's dangerous, it's immoral. You've never had anything to do with young ladies? I see. I'm a Spanish grandmother. Prostitution. Agree with it or disagree, I don't think anyone should have to put up with it on their front doorstep. Girls openly selling sex, and men only too keen to buy. And one thing's very clear to me. Many of those involved are openly flouting the law, and that law should be enforced more vigorously. So I'm sending out a message to prostitutes, pimps, curb crawlers, and brothel owners everywhere. It's a blunt and unbending message, but when you see the problem firsthand, you'll realise why. Welcome to this very pleasant, leafy road in a very pleasant, leafy part of Peterborough. Understandably, highly popular with families, but also, sadly, with a very different type of person. With the women who sell themselves for sex, and their clients, the curb crawlers. Women like these, shameless, desperate, and probably on drugs. Blatantly out on the street all hours of the day and night, with no regard for the decent families who live here. Hello, I'm Anne.
Hi, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Families like the Perrys. Chris and his wife Sachiko have 5 children between 5 and 18 years of age. They've lived here for 7 years and it's their dream house. Or it would be if it wasn't for the prostitutes working on their doorstep.
At one stage, a couple of years ago, it got to the point where every evening I would walk outside and I could see working girls within 10 to 20 yards of the front door. I would go and stand outside the house and say to the girls, well, look, if you want to work, go somewhere else, because I'm going to start chatting to every car that pulls up here. So I don't think you're going to do too much business tonight.
So a lot of people watching this will say, oh, you know, if I was in that position, I'd move. Why don't you?
This is our house. This is our home. This is the only house that our daughters have ever known. Why should we move?
My sentiments exactly. I can't imagine how this poor family cope with this every day, but I'm going to find out. I'm moving in with the Perrys and I can't wait to meet their unwelcome visitors. As soon as I've unpacked, I ask Chris to take me on a neighbourhood tour. We're barely out of the door when we hear a terrible commotion just round the corner.
Don't tighten it! Do not hurt my arms! I'm telling you now!
The police are arresting a prostitute.
Do not... Don't pull it! How did I loosen that? How did I loosen it? You're the one who tightened it, not me!
Chris recognises her as one of the regular prostitutes from his road. Her name is Colette, and the police say she's ignored previous warnings to stay away from the area. Are you Colette? Were you doing it again? So they're now taking her into custody.
They've come to arrest me for breach of my bail conditions. So I can't see how I have breached my bail conditions.
Well, only they can tell you that. I can't.
Keep me in.
Well, if they keep you in, at least you won't be in danger on the streets tonight, will you?
I choose my life, yeah. I have chosen...
You haven't chosen this one.
Yes, I have. I chose to be a prostitute. I have chose to do drugs. I've chose everything I do. Yeah?
But you don't want to choose to go on doing it, do you?
No one's forcing me to do what I do.
Indeed, nobody's forcing. Well, I assume nobody's forcing you. It's horrible to witness. A young girl with so many problems and prostitution just one of them. Got to be more to life than this, hasn't there?
They harass me every single time.
You're so young. You don't want this life, do you? But she seemed too drunk or too drugged to care.
I'm just making sure you don't get hurt. You got everything wrapped up.
Lottie, you're a bunch of
I'd really like to talk properly with Colette about this sorry life she's chosen, but that will have to wait until the police are finished with her and she's sobered up. But if it's this bad here by day, heaven knows what it's like after dark. Excuse me? I don't have to wait long to find out. I've spotted another working girl, but unlike Colette, this one doesn't want to talk to me. Excuse me, we're making a programme about Dear me. Well, that's certainly shown what sort of place this is to live in. Not very nice. Lovely. I'm covered in beer, simply for trying to ask a few questions. That was certainly interesting.
Yeah,
I think I shall smell of beer now. People will think I've changed my habits.
Yeah, I think we both will, yeah.
Was that what you expected?
From this distance away, I've been spat at, more than once. And it's not very nice, because 9 times out of 10 they're intravenous drug users or crack addicts. So.
I've only been in Peterborough for a short time, but it's clear that prostitution blights the lives of ordinary law-abiding people. So what can be done? Well, arresting prostitutes like that young girl Colette is just one option in a government strategy aimed at reducing the problem, but there are others. In Southampton, police are trying out a very different Home Office initiative.
We want the road cleaned off so that it's safe.
This force operates a zero-tolerance policy towards men looking for sex. Tonight I'm joining them on one of their regular curb the crawler operations. Yep, that's a single man, and that is a single man. Single men visiting this red light district will be in for a shock tonight. Well, I wonder what this one's going to say.
So, I'm from the Vice Investigation Team. This area is an area that's frequented by prostitutes.
I take it you're not a curb crawler. The police go for the jugular, stopping every car with a single male driver in the red light district.
So you're not here actually looking for the services of a prostitute?
Oh, whatever, smart woman.
It's an unusual place for you to come, sir, that's all I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
It's unbelievable how many drivers head for this known red light area. Well, not surprisingly, many are embarrassed when they're stopped.
I'm going to be direct now, sir. Are you down here looking for the services of a prostitute?
Sir.
You're not? You're a married man, sir. Sorry? You haven't really given me a sensible reason for why you're down here, but I'm not suggesting that that is what you're doing. What I would ask, however, is that you don't come through here again.
Okay.
That is another citizen being told that in free Britain he may not come here again. And he's taken it like a lamb. The Southampton approach may be hard line, but it's definitely proved effective.
In 2003, before we started this operation and many of the other things that we do in the area, we had in excess of 300 street prostitutes that we were aware of. Now that's actually down to 89, and that's purely down to the supply and demand effect, i.e. stopping the curb crawlers, stopping the cruisers, and withdrawing the reason for the girls to be here.
The UK prostitution business is worth an estimated £770 million. And according to surveys, 1 in 20 men have used the services of a prostitute. Well, that's a lot of punters, but I could only find one willing to talk to me. I met 40-year-old Piers Hernu in London's Soho.
Well, initially I did it out of curiosity, because I thought it was one of those rites of passage that perhaps any curious young man should find out. A lot of these girls, they'd like to earn a good living, they quite like sex quite a lot as well, and for them it just kind of fits in and it's absolutely fine.
Piers, I think you're in cloud cuckoo land. What sort of lives do you think they're living?
Well, again, there's a wide variety of lives. I think many heroin addicts turn to prostitution because it's the only way they can get heroin.
That's
it doesn't mean...
It's the only way they can pay for it.
Yes. But, you know, if you look at that lot and sort of extrapolate that and assume that all prostitutes are drug addicts, you know, it's a
most of those on the street.
oversimplification.
Most of those on the street are exactly that.
Yes, on the street. But don't forget, Anne, a vast amount of women working, for instance, here in London are what we call escorts. A euphemism, I know, but you know, these aren't women on the street. These are women who go out and meet a businessman for 300 or 400 quid.
By your own admission, you've used street prostitutes. You haven't just gone for the upper class call girl. You've used street prostitutes. Did you think about their lives when you were using them?
Yes, I did. And it's a tricky one, I'll admit, but you know, it's a difficult thing to kind of address, you know. It's like, am I really taking part in somebody else's downfall? Or am I just entering into an honest contract between someone who's selling and someone who's buying?
Buying and selling sex on the street's an honest contract, not according to the law, which is why some girls find themselves behind bars. Well, about 36 hours ago, I saw a young prostitute, Colette, being arrested. She's just been bailed, and I'm going to have a word with her because there's somebody I want her to meet. Oh, you haven't had much of a weekend, have you?
No, I've had a crap weekend.
Feel like a cup of coffee?
Please.
Colette is barely recognisable as the violent, drugged young woman I'd met just a few days earlier. Hopefully, I can now have a sensible conversation. Colette, how old are you?
26.
You're 26, you're in your mid-20s, you're a young woman, you've got your life ahead of you, childbearing years ahead of you, opportunities ahead of you. Don't you sometimes wake up in the morning and think, that's it, no more, I'm going to get clean, I'm going to live normally?
I have been clean. When I lived in Scotland, my mum took me to Scotland and I was clean for about a year and a half. But there's so many drugs about in Peterborough at the minute, it's just a temptation, it's too easily.
Why don't you go and live with your family instead of working the streets?
My mum won't have me back. My mum doesn't even know that I'm a working girl.
She'd have you back. To get across my point more forcefully, I asked someone else to join me. Pat Brown is from Liverpool and knows the dangers of prostitution only too well.
Bless my daughter, Pauline's 25. She was married 4 years ago and she got into a car, didn't come back. She was dead for 9 days outside in an alleyway, chopped up in bin bags. Her head was in the freezer. Every time you get into a car, you don't know if you're coming home. So I'm asking you, I'm a mother, you go home to your mum. Your mother will want you. She will want you back. Your mother loves you, she gave birth to you. And you're her life. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? All you gotta do is make that call. Just do it. Ring your mum.
To be honest, I'd rather go to my brother's than my mum's.
OK. But I want you to make that call to your brother because I've got a feeling we'll say goodbye to you and you'll be on the streets tonight. I don't want you on the streets tonight. I want you safe tonight.
Yeah. Hello, it's Colette. You're right, listen, you know, you said I could come up and stay with you. Can I come up as soon as possible?
Colette appears genuine, but will her need for drugs drive her back onto the streets? Coming up, how would you like to face this on your doorstep?
We're now overrun with prostitutes. Even my granddaughter at 15 was approached.
And meet the madam who makes a fortune from prostitution, but claims she's doing nothing wrong. You wouldn't want a daughter to come into this?
No! God, no! I'll kill her!
This is the X Factor. The worst group I have ever heard.
I really miss Louis.
We're going to bring back Louis Walsh.
The X Factor starts Saturday at 7:40 on ITV1.
For exclusive previews, visit itv.com.
For Glasgow, turn left. Take the next right. Continue straight on. Keep going straight on. Now, enjoy.
The new Peugeot 207, the drive of your life.
As a child expert, I always say, keep kids happy and play with them every day. And don't forget, kids really like Frutella.
New Dove Pro Age for thick, full-looking hair. Beauty has no age limit.
Coming up, the death toll keeps rising. It's now feared 500 people were killed in yesterday's suicide bomb attacks in Iraq. Details at 10.
Prostitution ruins lives. Law-abiding people don't want it on their doorsteps, and I'm more convinced than ever that they shouldn't have to put up with it. People like the residents of Ardwick in Manchester. They've warned me this place is teeming with prostitutes, and they weren't exaggerating. My name's Anne Widdecombe from ITV, and I'm making a programme about prostitution, and I wondered what your view on the subject was.
Depends if you're offering anything.
Depends what?
If you're offering us anything.
Oh no, we don't pay for views. Well, she certainly wanted paying for her views. I wonder if she wants paying for anything else. But moments later, has her friend found someone willing to pay? There are too many young women hanging around on these streets for it to be a coincidence. But no one wants to talk to me. We're making a film about prostitution. As I watch the same girls continue to ply their trade, I'm also aware of two men ever present on the street. I see the same girl I just tried to speak to, talking with them. So are they involved with these prostitutes in some way? I want to find out. Good evening. How do you do? Fine. We're making a film about prostitution in Manchester. Do you know anything about that? You've never had anything to do with young ladies? I see. I'm a Spanish grandmother. Next morning, the results of prostitution. Condoms, needles, crack cans. Ugh, horrible. And the poor residents have to put up with it day in, day out.
There has been one case where one of the gentlemen here came out of his front door and he had to step over a little girl who got a needle stuck in her.
So a man actually came out of his own front door and found a woman with a needle actually in her, outside his own front door. Yeah. The government says its policy is to challenge the idea that street prostitution is inevitable and permanent. It insists that life for communities affected by prostitution must improve. Fine words, but what about action? This community doesn't see any signs of improvement. Well, what's it like on this estate?
We're now overrun with prostitutes.
Prostitutes?
Yeah.
Oh, up and down here?
Up and down, all hours of the night. It's bad. The grandchildren won't go out. We won't let them, because even my granddaughter at 15 was approached.
Your 15-year-old granddaughter was propositioned?
Yeah, we've got police that's trying to do the job, I must admit. But their hands are tied. They can't do half the jobs that needs doing on this area. There's more priorities than prostitutes.
Privately, some residents here told me they'd even prefer to see a brothel in the neighbourhood rather than the girls on their streets. Many people support this so-called solution, and the government has considered legalising small brothels, but turned the idea down. Yet thousands do still exist. Well, this is just an ordinary terrace street, such as any you might find all over the country. But there's a brothel here, and that apparently is by no means unusual. So I'm off to see the madam, and I don't really know what to expect. Hello, you Chantal?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Anne.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. Chantal didn't want to be recognised, and even asked for her voice to be disguised. How many girls work for you?
We have around 6 ladies.
Why do you think the girls who are doing this for you do it? Have they got drug habits?
No. This is a drug-free place. And they come here to work because they think it's easy money. But, Han, I am telling you,
there's nothing easy about this.
It is not a easy money.
You wouldn't want a daughter to come into this, would you?
No! God, no! I'll kill her!
But all those ladies who work for you are somebody's daughter.
Yes, they're somebody's daughter, but they have a choice.
If what Chantal tells me is true, the brothel's a very lucrative business.
This business is money business, and the ladies, they earn. They earn money.
How do the punters know about you? How do they find you?
Because I advertise.
Yeah? You advertise?
Yes.
If you tell me you wouldn't let your daughter do it, you'd kill her. It's bad, it's dangerous, but you advertise.
No, but Anna, I am not the only place. You see the more than 100 people who are advertised for escorts. You can be here talking to me and your husband is at home with another woman.
Well, perhaps it's just as well I haven't got a husband. Men who pay for sex behind closed doors aren't technically breaking the law, whether they're visiting brothels or so-called health clubs that also advertise sexual services. But women who sell their bodies are at risk of prosecution. The organisation that speaks for them says many are forced into prostitution and shouldn't be criminalised as a result.
Well, prostitution, first of all, is about women's poverty, certainly. And it's not about morality any longer. That's what no government has ever wanted to deal with. Successive governments, including your government. And this is what we've got now. Women being murdered, men getting away with violent attacks again and again and again and going on to murder.
You say it's about women's poverty.
Yes.
But the women I've talked to weren't covering basic needs. They were trapped in a heroin habit.
Well, women who work on the streets are the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many thousands in the world, millions of women who are in the sex industry in order to support their families.
What's your solution?
Well, we think that the way forward is to look at what's happened in New Zealand. They have decriminalised there. Women have started to be able to come off the street and work more safely from premises. The police are having to take reports of violence more seriously so that any attacks on women are cleared up more quickly, and thus all women are safer.
I disagree with Carrie. I don't believe prostitution should be legalised, and I don't believe residents should have to put up with it. And I don't believe a woman can be truly safe so long as she lives in this twilight world. My journey into that world is nearly over, but there's one person I can't stop thinking about. 3 weeks back, Colette promised me she would try to put prostitution and drugs behind her. But now I've heard that she's again working on the streets, near Chris Perry's house in Peterborough. I've had my say, so now it's his turn. Has it ever occurred to you that you're causing a real problem for the people who live here?
I've no doubt it does, but...
Here's a gentleman who lives here. He can tell you about it.
Hi, Colette. Yeah, I have 4 daughters, you know, and they've been approached by curb crawlers, talking to them, propositioning them. And the sad thing is, I'm afraid to say, they're here because you're here.
But it could work the other way. If they weren't here, I wouldn't be here.
I think it's very easy for you to convince yourself that you're not really causing any impact, and it causes a lot of hassle.
The reason most of the girls choose this kind of area is because if there is any problems with one of the punters they get in a car with or anything, they have got somewhere to run and get help.
I can see her logic, but it's clear that all thoughts of moving away have been forgotten. Time for one last try. What did you want to do when you were 14 or 15? It was never this.
I wanted to be a nanny.
A nanny? Look
in
after
America,
children.
yeah.
And what happened to that ambition?
Drugs. It's the biggest hold anything and anyone's ever had over me. Even if I did get off drugs and off the streets and that, who would give me a job now?
Sure, but several months after you've given it up, somebody will give you a job. I can't believe you really want to do this, do you?
No, not at all. Hate it.
Hate it?
Yeah, hate it. I think if I don't do it, I'm not going to have the money. If I ain't got the money, I'm not going to get my drugs. If I ain't got my drugs, I'm not going to be well. It's a vicious circle.
And that's why the chances of prostitutes like Colette staying off the streets are so slim. Government figures show 95% of street prostitutes are Class A drug users. But even if they want to stop, there are few places for them to go. Police action is part of the solution, but there's also an urgent need for more shelters, offering treatment to get these women off drugs. Without them, street girls will continue to plague residents up and down the country and put themselves in danger.
There had been nothing in the world like Elvis Presley.
With exclusive interviews and colour film, Young Elvis in Colour, Thursday, ITV1.
Star psychic Sally Morgan is back in half an hour.
Hyperdrive is back in orbit for a new episode tomorrow night on BBC Two at 9:30.
One of us, including me, although it's not me,
Or me.
is the traitor.
Everything to do with he is the one. Bruce Parry becomes one of the tribe, Tuesday at 9 on BBC Two.
Worst of friends is how the best of times will end. This time next year.
With no regard for the decent families who live here. Hello, I'm Anne.
Hi, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Families like the Perrys. Chris and his wife Sachiko have 5 children between 5 and 18 years of age. They've lived here for 7 years and it's their dream house. Or it would be if it wasn't for the prostitutes working on their doorstep.
At one stage, a couple of years ago, it got to the point where every evening I would walk outside and I could see working girls within 10 to 20 yards of the front door. I would go and stand outside the house and say to the girls, well, look, if you want to work, go somewhere else, because I'm going to start chatting to every car that pulls up here.
And that law should be enforced more vigorously. So I'm sending out a message to prostitutes, pimps, curb crawlers and brothel owners everywhere. It's a blunt and unbending message, but when you see the problem firsthand, you'll realise why. Welcome to this very pleasant, leafy road in a very pleasant, leafy part of Peterborough. Understandably highly popular with families, but also sadly with a very different type of person, with the women who sell themselves for sex, and their clients, the curb crawlers. Women like these, shameless, desperate and probably on drugs, blatantly out on the street all hours of the day and night. It's sordid, it's dangerous, it's immoral. You've never had anything to do with young ladies? I see. I'm a Spanish grandmother. Prostitution. Agree with it or disagree, I don't think anyone should have to put up with it on their front doorstep. Girls openly selling sex, and men only too keen to buy. And one thing's very clear to me. Many of those involved are openly flouting the law.
So I don't think you're going to do too much business tonight.
So a lot of people watching this will say, oh, you know, if I was in that position, I'd move. Why don't you?
This is our house. This is our home. This is the only house that our daughters have ever known. Why should we move?
My sentiments exactly. I can't imagine how this poor family cope with this every day, but I'm going to find out. I'm moving in with the Perrys and I can't wait to meet their unwelcome visitors. As soon as I've unpacked, I ask Chris to take me on a neighbourhood tour. We're barely out of the door when we hear a terrible commotion just round the corner.
Don't tighten it, do not hurt my...
They'll definitely have you howling over on ITV4 now. Here we get an insight into one of the country's oldest professions with Anne Widdecombe versus prostitution.
My name's Anne Widdecombe from ITV, and I'm making a programme about prostitution, and I wondered what your view on the subject was.
Depends if you're offering anything.
Well, she certainly wanted paying for her views. I wonder if she wants paying for anything else. There are seedy services being sold in the UK that the public shouldn't have to put up with.
We're now overrun with prostitutes.
Lottie, you're a bunch of...
Decent neighbourhoods across the country are being affected.
We're making a programme about